Hi folks. This video will walk you through the basic steps of downloading and installing iTree version 5 software onto a desktop or laptop computer. Now before we get started with the processes, I wanted to point out a couple resources on the iTree website which may be helpful. So what you see here is the itreetools.org website. And underneath the Applications tab is System Requirements. So I would advise you to first check through, make sure that you can meet these requirements. And primarily this is the one that you really want to pay attention to. iTree is designed to run on a Windows operating system. So Windows XP or greater will usually work fine. And there are a couple other requirements like Microsoft Excel and Adobe Reader, which most computers should have. A lot of the other components are installed with iTree, are included in the actual installation. And if you scroll down, there's some additional information. So iTree is not compatible for Apple Macintosh. There's some more information here that talks about mobile data collection, but we're not going to discuss that at this time. What I will say is that in order to use that, you do have to first have Streets or Eco loaded on a desktop, and that's how you can actually generate the link to use mobile data collection. But for now, we're just worried about trying to acquire the desktop software and get that loaded on here. One of the other resources that's really helpful is underneath the Resources tabs. And if you navigate to Manuals and Workbooks, all the information that we just looked at is also included in the individual iTree application manuals. And in addition, there is this document, which is a PDF file that just has just the same system requirements and also some basic installation information. I already have this launched, so I'll show you what this looks like. And here again, some of that same information that we just saw is presented here. But on page 2, it actually has the steps outlined that we're now going to be going through next. How do I request and install iTree? And it has some information here which might be helpful in either preventing problems or troubleshooting problems that you may encounter. So the next few steps that we're going to be going through are basically outlined here. What we need to do is first register on the iTree website. And then once you do that, you will receive an automated email that contains an activation link. And this allows you to activate your account. So this presents a problem for some people, especially if they're working on a government or institution computer, because it's an auto-generated email. It is sometimes interpreted as being spam by security systems. So if you don't receive that immediately, check your spam folders, and better off if you can check with your IT if you're on an institutional system to see that. You can actually receive an email from info@itreetools.org beforehand. Have your computer set up to allow that, then you might not have problems and a disconnect with communicating with our system. So I'm going to minimize this for now. And what we're going to do is register. And so you need to populate the information here. And here again, as I scroll down, you do have to meet these requirements for passwords. Once we have this information populated on the registration page, we'll go ahead and hit register. And if all goes well, you'll receive this message letting you know that you registered okay. Now we're not activated yet. So, as I mentioned earlier, you should receive an email with an activation link. So I'm just going to activate this. And you receive this response. Now I know that I'm activated. So at this point here, I can actually log in. So up at the top, you see this button right here that says login. So once we have our credentials entered, we can go ahead and log in. And at the top in the header, you'll notice that your username will be next to the welcome sign here. So that indicates that you've successfully logged in onto the website. We can now go ahead and select Get the Tools. This brings you to a screen where you have two options. You can either select a CD, and one will be shipped out to you by mail. Usually could take a couple weeks actually. So we typically recommend using a download system because you can do that immediately. So what you want to do here is select the link that says iTree Suite version 5.0. And you'll have this option to save the file. It will take some time to download depending on the internet connection that you have. If you are working in an institution or a school, people have told me it's taken up to 2 hours. Typically on my machine it might take up to 11 minutes or so, but it varies greatly, and it is possible that you can have this time out if you have a really slow internet connection. And oftentimes when people run into this, I'll tell them to try to do this on their own home computer and then just copy the setup.exe file onto a flash drive and then onto the machine that you actually want to install it on. So all I'm going to do here is save this file onto my desktop. And I've already downloaded this in advance, so we don't have to watch this go through that process. So here I would just navigate to my desktop and then save this. I've already done that. So once that is downloaded, you will have this file, itreesetup.exe. That's the installation package. Now a couple things to keep in mind before you actually go ahead and launch this and run the installation. It's a good idea to close out applications that might be open on your machine. The other thing that I wanted to mention is that you will need administrative rights to do an installation on certain computers. If it's not your own computer, if you're on a work computer, chances are you're going to need IT help to do this install for you. The other thing I wanted to mention is that the installation files will be installed typically onto the C program files folder, and it will create a folder called iTree. So if you have IT help doing the install, ask them also to give you full admin rights to that folder where the installation files reside too, so that will prevent any subsequent errors that you may receive accessing those files in there as you're creating projects and so forth. So I'm just going to close out Firefox and I'm going to go ahead and launch the install. And we'll just go ahead and run this. And this will take some time as it extracts the installation files and starts running through the sequences. So I will probably be pausing this periodically and picking up just so you don't have to watch it go through the process here. So there are a couple spots where you do have to keep an eye on this because it prompts you to proceed. And it also shows you the iTree end user's license agreement, which you can scroll through and read or print if you so desire. And you do need to accept that to continue. And typically I would recommend to folks to do the complete installation. We may just be using one or two of these programs for training, or you may be using one or two for your own needs, but it is nice just to have access to those other programs in the future. So we'll go ahead and do a complete install. And this will take some time to run through its sequence. So after it goes through a number of steps where it's installing various files, I did not have this running through that whole sequence. It took several minutes to actually do the install. It will hopefully eventually bring you to the finish screen. If you happen to have an error and it stops at a certain point, try to remember where it stopped if it was loading in a particular file, and write that down, because that's helpful if we have to try to troubleshoot installation errors. I'm going to hit finish, and that's it. So one of the things that I suggest after you do the installation, especially for those folks who will be attending one of our upcoming trainings, is just to now make sure that you can actually launch the application. So to launch the application, you go to the Start button, All Programs. You should now have a folder called iTree. And when you select that, you'll see Eco, Hydro, Species, Streets, View, and Storm. iTree Canopy and Design are both online applications, so they do not need to be installed. You can access those right from the iTree website. So let's go ahead and select streets. It'll take a couple seconds for this to initialize. One of the things that you can do is, if you have an application on your machine, Help About will tell you what the version is. So this is the latest version of Streets 5.1, which is within the iTree Suite version 5.0.8. So as patches are released, you can also use this check for updates. And so this will actually just do a check on the software and let you know if you are current, and if not, that there is an update, and it'll actually walk you through the sequence of downloading the patch and then running through that install so that you are all up to date. So moving forward in the future, as patches are released, and they are, as we do find issues and people report things that are wrong with the software, you can then update accordingly through the application instead of going through those steps that we just went through. So what we can do here, just to make sure this is working properly, is open up one of these example projects which are embedded within the application. So here is just a sample project right here from the city of Davis, California. Now once I select that, you'll see up at the top it says iTree Streets Sample Project. So that's how it is telling you that there is an active project. It doesn't have anything that really changes in the background other than that is telling you that it's active, and you would now be able to select and access some of the reports behind here. So we can go ahead and just launch one of these relative age distribution just to see that that is running properly. It's taking a couple seconds to generate that report initially. And there it is. So we can see that everything seems to be working properly in this installation. So again, just to recap, you have to go through the registration process, get the activation link, log on to the system, get the tools, download that iTree setup.exe file, and then run through the installation. And then it's just a good idea just to check and test and make sure that you can actually access the application. So hopefully that will get you to at least this point, and then we will pick up from here in the future. Thank you.